The movie begins by introducing the story. It's about a comedian named Dodit Mulyanto, who starts telling us about his childhood in a village called Bayanasari. As a child, Dodit saw other kids playing with a toy car called Tomio, which ran on batteries. He wanted to play with it too, but he didn't have a battery. One of the kids offered to lend him a battery, but Dodit refused, saying he'd play with his younger brother instead. However, he didn't actually have a younger brother. The truth was, he didn't have a battery-powered car at all, just a simple wooden car. His family was very poor. When he went home, we met his family. His mother, father, and his elder sister, Liz, who was pregnant. Liz's husband, Devo, lived with them as a live-in son-in-law. Dodit's parents were called Mr. and Mrs. Joko, but in the movie, they're often referred to as mother and father. One day, Dodit's father got a promotion and was transferred to a place called Mathan in Japanese Indonesia to work as a forest ranger. This meant they had to move for a year, and Dodit's school would change. He didn't like this news because he didn't want to leave the place he'd grown up in. Feeling upset, he went to his room. His mother came to comfort him and promised that once his father started working, she'd buy him a Tomio car like the one his friends had. When Dodit asked how long it would take, she said about a year. He thought that was too long, but his mother explained that good things take time. She promised he would get his favorite toy eventually, and this made him agree to move. The next day, the family left. Devo and Liz traveled in a pickup truck with their luggage, while Dodit and his parents rode on a bike. Their new house was located in the middle of a forest. The family was moving to their new house, located in the forest, because Dodit's father had taken a job as a forest ranger. While traveling, their bike's tire got punctured, so they had to continue on foot. Along the way, Dodit's mom noticed someone sitting on a tree, which startled her. However, his father reassured her that it was probably just a monkey. They didn't get scared and kept moving, eventually reaching their destination in the evening. When they arrived, Dodit noticed a strange cage near the house. The cage gave off eerie and unsettling vibes. As they started unloading their luggage from the pickup truck, Liz's mom asked her to rest since she shouldn't strain herself in her condition. Soon after, two of Dodit's father's co-workers, Soo-young and Kasno, arrived. They explained they were late because they were nervous about coming here. They mentioned it was Clave Friday night, a day in the Javanese calendar when spirits of ancestors visit their families, but ghosts are also said to roam freely. Although Soo-young and Kasno claimed they came to visit, not to work, they were hesitant to stay because of the ghostly tales surrounding Clave Friday. Dodit's father offered them to stay, but they were visibly scared. Meanwhile, Liz noticed the strange cage and asked about it. Soo-young and Kasno explained it was used to punish people who stole wood, and Dodit's father mentioned that there were many thieves in the area. He said he would guard the place, and Soo-young and Kasno reluctantly agreed to join him, despite their fear. That night, Liz told Devo she felt the house was haunted. Devo tried to comfort her by offering to help with her work. Liz pretended to be tired and lay down to rest but became terrified when she saw a dead lizard. Devo took the lizard outside to throw it away. At that moment, a ghost appeared, but Devo didn't notice it. Meanwhile, Soo-young and Kasno, still scared, began talking about the house's history. Kasno started to share details, but Soo-young stopped him, insisting they shouldn't discuss the house's past. Dodit was awakened by strange noises during the night and, frightened, woke up his mom. His mother decided to check outside as her husband hadn't returned yet. Together, Dodit and his mom went to inspect the cage. Soo-young and Kasno, also hearing the noise, debated who should check it out. Kasno, though scared, finally agreed to go. Dodit's mom reached the cage and found a bunch of hair inside. However, she didn't notice the ghost lurking within the cage, though it was visible to the audience. Shortly after, Kasno arrived and saw only Dodit's mom. She explained she had heard noises coming from the cage, prompting her to investigate. Dodit's father arrived and went inside the house. The next day, Dodit's father and Devo went to work, and Soo-young and Kasno joined them. Meanwhile, Dodit got ready for school. During this time, an old man named Salamat arrived to sell oil. Lisa's mother sent him to buy the oil, and Salamat handed it over. While talking, Salamat asked if they were living there. When Lisa's mother said yes, Salamat warned her that many people had died in the house before, including thieves who used to steal wood. Hearing this, Lisa got very scared, which wasn't good for her health. Dodit's father returned home because he had forgotten something. When he heard Salamat's words, he stopped him, believing Salamat was just trying to scare them. Dodit's father dismissed these as mere rumors. Later, Dodit's mother dropped him off at school, and as she left, a ghost appeared on a tree. The scene then shifted to Lisa. While taking off her clothes, she noticed a mysterious handprint on her blanket, which suddenly disappeared. Confused, she couldn't understand what was happening. Then she heard someone shouting for help from the cage outside. Before she could react, Devo arrived and told her it wasn't safe to wander around like that, taking her back inside. As time passed, more paranormal activities occurred, and the family began to believe Salamat's warnings. They realized the house wasn't ordinary, it was truly haunted. One day, Soo-young suddenly started behaving like a madman, shocking everyone. Kasno had to punch him to calm him down. The story had a mix of horror and some comedic moments. Things escalated, and Dodit's mother told her husband that the house wasn't safe for their children. She felt something was seriously wrong. However, Dodit's father dismissed her concerns, saying that God was with them and nothing would happen. When Dodit's mother questioned if they could leave the job and the house, her husband explained that it wasn't just a job. It was his responsibility, and he was doing it for the family, not for himself. This led to an argument, and Dodit's mother went to her room, where Dodit told her he didn't want to leave the house because he wanted a Tomio car. He said his friends would mock him if he didn't get one. His mother promised to buy him the world's most expensive Tomio car, no matter what. Meanwhile, Kasno stayed with Soo-young, who eventually regained consciousness but didn't remember anything, not even being punched or acting possessed. Kasno felt relieved, as Soo-young wouldn't hold a grudge. Dodit joined them and demanded they tell him about the house's history. However, they were too scared to say anything, so Dodit insisted they take him to Salamat, who knew everything. Salamat then shared the story behind the house. It all began during the time when the Dutch East India Company was colonizing parts of Indonesia. The story was about a local girl named Ruknini, who fell in love with a married Dutchman, leading to a complicated and tragic relationship. Ruknini had a physical relationship with the Dutchman and became pregnant. When the Dutchman's wife found out about their affair, he blamed everything on Ruknini, denying her as his wife. As punishment, Ruknini was locked in a cage, the same cage found in this house. She was also accused of stealing wood. To punish her further, her thumb was cut off. Tragically, she gave birth to her child inside the cage, and shortly after, both she and her child were killed. This happened on a night known as Claven Night. When Dodit told his father about this story, Mr. Joko dismissed it, calling it nonsense. That night, Mr. Joko, Devo, Sujay, and Kasno went into the jungle. While collecting wood, Sujay saw someone's feet. When he looked up, he saw a ghost asking for help. Terrified, he panicked, but the others managed to calm him down. Meanwhile, back at home, Lise went to fetch some water. She saw Devo heading toward the bathroom and assumed he had returned home. Wanting to help, she prepared water for his bath. But when she opened the bathroom door later, Devo was gone. Confused, she told her mother, who revealed that Devo was still in the jungle with Mr. Joko. Lise was terrified, wondering who it was she had seen earlier. That night, Lise had a nightmare where she saw herself being helped during childbirth by a ghost. She woke up scared and was further startled when she saw her mother wearing a face pack. Mr. Joko and Devo returned, and Lise told them about her nightmare. Everyone reassured her it was just a dream, but Mrs. Joko was uneasy and felt something was wrong with the house. The next day, Mrs. Joko performed a local ritual to ward off spirits, but Mr. Joko didn't approve of it. When Dodit came home from school, he said his parents were fighting, so he sat outside. His sister Lis came to take him to play. However, it turned out the person who came wasn't Lis but a spirit. Realizing this, Dodit ran away and didn't return home by nightfall. The family became worried. Mrs. Joko was particularly anxious, and Sujay and Kasno speculated that Rukmini's spirit was involved. Mr. Joko decided to gather the men and search for Dodit in the jungle. Despite their efforts, they couldn't find him. Sujay and Kasno asked Salamat for help, but he didn't know anything either. Dodit in a graveyard, singing to a ghost sitting in a tree. Dodit sees her singing, but Salamat arrives and starts taking her away. Dodit points toward an object, but Salamat warns him not to because doing so will attract ghosts. Salamat explains that ghosts are drawn to the dead because they want to live like the living and possess them to enter the human world. Salamat forbids her from speaking about this to anyone and gives her an object, advising her to keep it close to ward off spirits. At home, everyone is sad until the dude returns. He had been in the slum with Salamat. When he arrives, his mother hugs him, cries, and warns him never to disappear like that again. It's worth noting that these strange incidents always happened on Friday nights, known as Claven Night. The family feels relief, and soon Lisa's pregnancy reaches its due time. One night, Lis suddenly goes into labor and gives birth to a baby girl. Although there is bleeding, the family is overjoyed at the baby's arrival. On another Claven Friday night, Dodit hears the baby crying. He approaches, but suddenly a hand appears at the window, scaring him. Just then his mother arrives, and the hand vanishes. Meanwhile, it starts raining in the jungle as Sujay and Kasno begin their journey home. Later that night, Lis wakes up and sees lizards all over her room. Terrified, she screams. It seems the ghosts from earlier had realized Lis was scared of lizards and were using them to frighten her. Her mother and the dude arrive to help, but when they go outside, even more lizards are there. The dude calls his father Mr. Joko, who checks the house, though he remains skeptical of any supernatural presence. As Mr. Joko investigates, the lights go out. The spirit is nearby, but Mr. Joko doesn't notice anything and continues to doubt the existence of ghosts. Lis, meanwhile, goes inside with her daughter, only to discover the baby is missing. The entire family panics. Dodit finds himself alone in the dark and realizes Lisa's baby is now in the hands of a ghost. The spirit appears before him, terrifying him, and he screams. Mrs. Joko comforts him, while Mr. Joko and Devo leave to get help from the townspeople. Soon, the entire town begins searching for the baby. Sujay and Kasno decide to seek help from Salamat. When they find him, Salamat learns about the situation and tells them about his ability to connect with the spirit world. He meditates and enters the spirit realm to search for Rukmini. In the spirit world, Salamat finds Rukmini locked in a cage. She tells him how much pain she is in and begs for his help to escape. Rukmini was with her son, but her hopes were shattered when the one she loved betrayed her. Heartbroken, she ended her life. Furious and hurt, Rukmini told Salamat that everyone should leave. Salamat, after learning all this, returned to the human world and warned everyone that only God could save them now. Meanwhile, Dodit heard a girl's voice outside. Before he could go out, the voice grew louder. Suddenly, all the doors and windows shut automatically. It became clear why Rukmini wanted a child. She could not have one of her own. That's why she took Lisa's baby. The spirit that had been appearing in different forms was Rukmini all along. She had waited for Lis to deliver the baby and had even helped Lis during her pregnancy in subtle ways. Lis had dreamed of someone aiding her, and that was Rukmini, giving a hint of her desire for the child. The family felt helpless. Salamat and Kasno decided to confront Rukmini, but as they approached her, both disappeared. They found themselves outside, surrounded by the spirits of those killed in the cage. Suzanne saw two spirits and, frightened, ran into a tree. Salamat and Kasno helped her up shortly after. Meanwhile, Dodit's family heard the baby crying from inside the cage. They quickly broke the lock and rushed in, finally finding the baby. Everyone was overjoyed. On the other hand, Salamat encountered the spirit of a tree named Boyu. Boyu had loved Ruknini deeply, but she ignored him for a Dutchman. Boyu turned out to be one of Salamat's ancestors. Reflecting on the situation, Salamat thought Ruknini had made a mistake by falling for a married man. After meeting Boyu, everyone left the area. The next day, Salamat explained that Ruknini was tied to the house and would never leave it. Staying there would be dangerous for the family. He also revealed that in the old days people were brutally killed, not just in the cell but also in the forest, which was haunted by many dangerous ghosts. He urged them to leave for their safety, and they decided to move back to their old house. As the family left, Sujay and Kasno hugged Mr. Joko, crying because they would miss him. The family was emotional but determined to move on. Years passed, and we see that Dodit had grown up. He was narrating the story from the same house, saying he was no longer afraid of anything. However, in a shocking moment, Ruknini's spirit appeared behind him. In a post-credit scene, Dodit's mother gave him his favorite toy car. At the shop, the worker handed the car to Dodit, but the girl's creepy expression hinted that Ruknini had never truly left him. The story ends with the unsettling realization that it wasn't over yet, leaving a lingering sense of suspense.